Welcome to the Bedrock Engineers Podcast, bringing you robot combat discussions for people who don't know what they're talking about.
It's carnage here in the Battlebots! Oh! Huge hit there! Now he's a fire-breathing dragon! Hey! Hold on! Woo! I feel like I'm in a scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre! Getting, we're gonna need a bot medic!
Here are your hosts, Ben and Scott. We are back to talk about the mid-season finale of Battlebots, but first, can we, I need to, address this thing that everybody's been memeing, ShArK Week. It's because ShArK Week had this big thing in the top right corner that says ShArK Week starts in 2 days with an animated shark for the entire 2 hours.
Yes. Okay, I watch it on cable, yes. I watch Battlebots on cable.
That was on Discovery Go as well, and that was all anybody could talk about in the live thread. It was so annoying. It was so annoying that I had to switch off the live stream and just go to the pre-recorded version and watch that, which didn't have the advertisement. Seriously,
it was up there the entire time.
What were they thinking?
They're advertising. That's what they're doing.
But for the whole 2 hours and with that big of a logo with a moving object in it, that's going to distract you constantly.
What they do.
That's too far. That's too far, in my opinion.
It's their network.
ShArK Week starts in 2 days, everybody. Did you know that? Because I didn't. I didn't see this big, annoying, obnoxious advertisement.
I care less about their stupid ShArK Week. I mean, it used to be good, and it's no good anymore.
Well, actually, it's funny. We were just talking last episode about how Air Jaws is pretty dang cool. They actually can't make that anymore because there's 2 orca whales that are camped out. They live near that area now, and they hunt those great whites. And the great whites have all left the place. As soon as they start attacking them, they leave. So they don't do that breaching out of the water thing anymore. So yeah, that sucks. But hey, I mean, such is the circle of life. It's another funny thing. We were talking about how orcas fuck up great whites, and now here we are. I just found out the other day that is happening. It's been happening for the last couple of years.
Interesting.
No, yeah. Anyway, on to Battlebots. The episode kind of sucks dick.
I didn't think it was very good.
No, it was not. It was not. There were
many weak fights.
So many fights that were either just outright trash or were cripple fights.
Yes. If these are the best, if these are the robots that are truly in, we'll say, slot 14 through 22, they're weak.
Well, who said they were slot 14 through 22?
Well, I mean, aren't they kind of supposed to be in those positions, generally speaking?
Well, no, you just have to be, we were talking about...
Well, they're not in the top 14, are they?
Well, Ragnarok's definitely not.
Well, there's no doubt about that.
I have to finally admit, Ragnarok kind of sucks.
Okay, so Ben.
Yeah?
I'm assuming, we've been over this a number of times, but there's already 1 through 14 probably that are kind of selected to go to the top 16. This was just to get 1 or 2 more people in?
No, they were supposed to get 1 more guy in.
Okay, so 1 more in. So shouldn't it generally be the robots that are seated somewhere along between 15 and 23?
I mean, can you honestly say that Ragnarok is seated anywhere near that?
Hell no, but they should have been.
Apparently our comments...
they should have been.
Our speculation about robots only being allowed in if they're quote-unquote doing well but losing is dead wrong. Because Ragnarok has, in its 2 fights it had before this, they not only lost, but they failed to even half perform because they lost in 1 hit both times. And they were still allowed in. Not even at the bottom seed. They were the 7th seed. Lucky somehow was the 8th seed, which is baffling to me.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely some, let's guarantee that Lucky and Minotaur have the rematch from Robo Games they had, because Lucky fought Toro Maximus at Robo Games. That was an awesome fight as well. Lucky took it to the judges. They did lose, but they did damn good. Good segue, by the way, into Minotaur versus Lucky. Lucky got its ass kicked.
Lucky did get its ass kicked.
Yeah. We were all worried about... We were all like, yes! And then no, because Minotaur was smoking, but then we found out it was just the belts, and we were like, oh, okay, never mind.
Yeah, for the record, I didn't think Minotaur looked terrific.
It didn't look amazing in this fight.
I actually thought they did look good in their final in the championship round.
Yeah, and the next
but
two fights,
I did not think they looked
100%.
great in this fight at all.
They didn't look great. They looked very good.
They went
but not
against.
great.
Yeah. I mean, they went against.
They were 90% there.
Yeah,
and then in the next two fights, they were 100% there.
And I mean, I would agree with that. Compared to the Minotaur that we watched last year, man, they did not look like that Minotaur in this fight.
Yeah, I agree. They were almost there in this fight, but not just then. But yeah, why the hell was Lucky the 8th seed? They've lost one fight and they took it to the judges.
I don't know.
And then Ragnarok, like I said, got its ass kicked in one hit in 2 fights, and they're a higher seed than Lucky? That makes no sense whatsoever.
We'll get to Ragnarok. I have some things to say about that.
So
certainly not a great fight. This first
fight was fight. It wasn't a good fight at all. It was nice to see Minotaur do what it was trying to do the whole time, but we didn't ever hear the death hum, even though the weapons seemed to be going at full speed. Don't worry, we got that, but not in this fight, which I was very confused about. And Lucky didn't get a single flip. The driving seemed pretty poor.
It did.
Why does Lucky perform so badly at Battlebots, but it's such a good machine at RoboGames? Is the question I have. Like, I don't get it. How are they so good there and so bad here?
Did they bring the same team?
Yeah, same team, same machine, just somehow, with 30 pounds of extra weight to meet the, max weight limit of Battlebots. But,
I got Lucky doing nothing.
Lucky did nothing. Lucky does nothing in most of its fights that it has. It's won 2 fights in 3 seasons.
Well, then, we're just arguing about whether Ragnarok or Lucky should be an 8th seed.
I think it should have been Ragnarok. It absolutely should have been Ragnarok. But I'm betting they just wanted Minotaur versus Lucky because that happened at RoboGames.
That's what they wanted.
Yeah. Not really a whole lot to say about that fight, I guess. No. So, yeah, kind of a lame one. How long did it last? Did you write it down?
I did not write it down, no.
All right, it went to a knockout. In fact, only one fight, the last fight, went to the judges this entire episode. Did you notice that?
I did notice that, yes. Yes. All the first round fights were KOs. The semifinals were KOs.
Yeah.
Actually, is that true? I think it is true. Did Black Dragon and Warhawk, was that a knockout?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not shocked that you don't remember that fight because that was easily the worst fight of the entire night.
Well, we could debate for hours about what the worst fight was because they got some competition in the worst fight.
Yeah, but there is no debate about the best fight. But we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. Captain Shredderator versus Black Dragon. Why is Captain Shredderator even here?
I don't know.
Like they're not even the bottom seed either. Are you serious?
I don't know. Yeah.
Are you StARtS?
Well, again, we're fighting over who should get 8th seed.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: do you think that there's robots that are below the 14th seed or the 15th seed, but better than these robots? Because clearly, the first through 15 best robots shouldn't be in this. All right, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless they're somehow worried about not making it in. Are there robots that are better than Lucky, Captain Shredderator, and Ragnarok that did not make it into this fight?
Are you asking if, obviously if they're not in the Desperado, but are you asking if they're better than Ragnarok, Warhawk, Captain Shredderator, all them, but yet are probably not going to make the final 16?
That's exactly what I'm asking.
Copperhead, think about them. They should be a great
robot. You thinking Copperhead will not make it?
Well, no. I'm thinking they could, but they've had 2 fights, and the one they won was a split decision, and then the other one was a knockout they lost. So they're not there yet, and absolutely not. But they are a much better robot than Ragnarok.
There's no question about that.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Copperhead will be in the top 16.
Actually, now that I think about it, why weren't they in this tournament?
Well, I think they're going to be in the top 16.
Well, if Black Dragon, who is doing better than Warhawk, if they're doing better than Copperhead is doing, and yet they still entered, not that they regret it because they won, but if they entered this and got accepted into this, then why wouldn't Copperhead enter? That's my question.
Well, it's a gamble, just like the guy that won it last year,
Lockjaw.
Yes. What's his name?
Donald Hudson.
There you go.
Yeah. Was interviewed in this episode.
Yes,
yeah.
he was. He debated whether he would do it again this year, and it's tough, but when you win it, you're guaranteed in. But, if you don't win it, you're not guaranteed in. So I think it's just a gamble.
Yeah. I love how we're not talking about the fight we're talking about because it was just like...
Well, we could talk about it. It was horrible. Let's move on. I mean, there's not much to talk about, man.
I mean, that was a hell of a hit.
That was
a hell of a hit.
For the record,
tore a big hole.
That was a big hit.
It tore a big hole in Black Dragon's wedge from a robot that I've said doesn't hit very hard, Captain Shredder, and yet it did that. It makes me wonder how tough Black Dragon's wedge actually is.
Yeah, big hit, a second big hit, and that was it for Captain Shredder, man.
Captain Shredder dies like it always does. I think it's time to retire that specific iteration and build a completely new one from the ground up. I would just like to see them be as good here as they are at King of Bots, because Shredder Tiger Claw, their Chinese robot, is so much better. And that's where most of their upgrades are going these days. And why were they, I mean, I already asked why they were here, but, I'm really wondering, if they're an alternate, I was under the impression that alternates aren't even allowed to go to the top 16 and aren't even guaranteed
maybe they
fights.
weren't. Maybe they were just, the 20th presidential candidate, and they know they're not going to make it.
The third-party candidate.
Well, not even then, I mean, let's face it, there's a whole bunch of people who get into races, and everybody knows they are not going to win. Maybe they just were filling a slot,
But,
they filled it rather poorly.
Yeah, to enter this tournament that...
they went down. Their best fight was their first fight.
Yeah,
and they kicked the crap out of Wanhu and then died. Their second fight was horrible, and this fight was not very good.
No, it was not. Well, it was much worse than their second fight, than either of their fights, really. And, of course, their teeth fell off like they always do, which, I mean, I know they're designed to do, but come on, that's just... I don't think that's a good idea. Yeah, that's really all there is to say about that fight. Man, we're only 12 minutes in. We're already on the third fight, I guess.
It's okay.
It is Endgame versus Gruff.
Yeah, it was a weak fight.
This was weak. This was very weak. What's worse, this fight or the next fight, Ragnarok, Warhawk?
It's debatable, man. Flip a coin.
I
have
Ragnarok
both
Warhawk.
of them written down as weak fight.
They are, though. Let's not mince our words here. This
Gruff
was a bad
definitely
fight.
got stuck on the floor, and for the first time, I really saw how poor the floor was.
Well, this is a kill saw thing. This is different. Although it was complete bullshit.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So I mean, Endgame. Realistically, let's be real, should have lost this fight. It was barely mobile at the best of times. It got one good hit, but otherwise was being outdriven by a still not working correctly robot. Because they were also crippled after that one hit.
Yes,
this was so boring.
It
and
was
just so tedious.
It was weak.
And then they got they didn't just get their forks stuck in the kill slice. They got it shoved in there 4 feet deep 6.
I mean, this is the kind of fight where if the first time viewer was to flip on and watch this fight, they would think this thing sucks.
If I told them that I watch Battlebots and have a podcast on it, and this was the fight they watched, they'd think I was nuts. Yeah.
It was weak, man.
Yeah, and Endgame is still unreliable as shit. They went one big hit. Actually, they had all 3 of their fights at this point in the series have ended with a big hit. Death Roll versus Endgame, as crazy as it was, if you actually watch it, there were very few hits in that fight. It was mainly the craziness came from Death Roll just spiraling out of control the whole time. The first big hit between them knocked Endgame out. Then with Ribot versus Endgame, people not giving Ribot enough credit because Ribot is a genuinely great machine. Endgame did survive a lot of big hits, to be fair, but they did ultimately break down. And then in this fight, they were completely crippled on one side, it seemed, for most of the fight by the one big hit at the beginning. And then from then on, they not only weren't managing to drive correctly, they didn't get a single good run up to get another big hit.
Just wiggled around, and
little sparks coming off Endgame's weapon.
Came in contact with each other by accident, apparently.
Yeah, they were just kind of. They both. I have it written down here that both machines seemed dazed and confused.
Yes,
they were hurting themselves in confusion. Mm-hmm. It was like that first hit knocked out their eyes, and they were just blindly stumbling around. Yeah, that was a great hit, but one good hit does not a good fight make.
No,
not at all.
Unless somebody gets the hell knocked out of them.
Although
And
but you hated Captain Shredder versus Black Dragon, so clearly not. This was a terrible fight.
Honestly, the first 4 fights were all pretty weak.
They were pretty bad. They were pretty bad.
Minotaur versus Lucky would have to be the best of those 4. Just because Minotaur started finally working.
Yeah. So it's funny, in episode 1 of this season, the opening montage actually spoiled the outcome of this fight and the first fight, because it showed Minotaur fighting Endgame. So, and I was one of the people who was foolish enough to go through that frame by frame to see all the fights. And then I was like, oh, that's cool, Endgame's fighting Minotaur. And then when I saw them both losing their first 2 fights, I was like, that's going to be a Desperado match, isn't it? Oh boy. And then I was like, hey, hopefully, right? Well, it also showed Minotaur fighting Lucky. So that's how that first match was spoiled. So as soon as I saw this fight card, I was like, okay, Endgame and Minotaur are both going to win their first fight, and then they're going to fight each other. So, dang it, Battlebots, why do you have to put spoilers like that? It's totally not my fault because I went through it frame by frame. It's your fault for putting it there. Kappa. But yeah, Gruff should have won. The way they lost was complete bullshit, and Endgame is still a bad robot this season. Realistically,
it wouldn't have made any difference.
This
you think it would have made any difference?
This should have been their 7th loss in a row. And it would have been if that hadn't happened. And also, if Gruff had won, we would have gotten another rematch from RoboGames in the form of Minotaur versus Gruff, which I would have loved to see. We should have seen it, and we didn't get to. Which really makes me sad. Because Gruff actually beat Toro Maximus at RoboGames. That fight was a banger.
Gruff didn't look good either, though, man.
No, it didn't.
I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference.
No, because Minotaur probably still would have won that fight anyway.
I think so, too. Especially considering they were both so damaged.
Yeah. Gruff's wedge was not repaired from its fight with Copperhead. It was plucked up, like a chunk was missing at the front. Minotaur would have gotten right under it and kicked its ass.
I mean, Gruff's its flame wasn't even hardly working.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't, was it? And Endgame, for some reason, was using their bar spinner. I'm just so confused about so much in this fight.
Well, it really looked like that the wear and tear of fighting showed in this episode.
But the 2-hour rebuild time has not yet come into play because this is their first fight.
I'm just simply saying before that happened, the start of this tournament.
Yeah.
A lot of robots did not look good. The only one, well, actually I'd probably say 2, that seemed to almost get better. Certainly Minotaur got better in this Desperado tournament. I kind of think Black Dragon looked pretty good throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
I didn't think they got better, but they certainly didn't get worse.
Ragnarok versus Warhawk. Sigh.
I'm thinking this might have been the worst fight. This was a horrible fight.
Well, what makes you think it was a horrible fight? It at least went on for like 2 minutes.
I just didn't like it. It was weak.
Ragnarok landed 2 hits with its axe. It was a weak fight, though.
It was weak.
I'm not arguing that it was good. I'm just arguing that it wasn't the worst. It wasn't total garbage.
I shouldn't have said it was the worst. It just wasn't very good.
It wasn't. It wasn't the worst.
I've got weak fight written down, and I've got Ragnarok got KO'd, and that's pretty much it, man.
Yeah, that super thick wedge that I've been going on about how no spinner can destroy it just got bent up like it was nothing. So clearly, this is not a good robot. I mean, I'm still going to argue that it could be a good design if they move that gear to a more protected place, but it's just not reliable in any way, shape, or form. That's what I was just
fixing to say. I don't think it is a good design. I don't think it's a good design. I don't think it's well built.
Well, clearly it's not well built.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the link also came out again, although this time it didn't get crushed. It literally was laying on the ground, like 5 feet from the robot. So, yeah.
I mean, it baffles me that you wouldn't, if you don't need to have a link in an American robot sport fight, why you wouldn't design it so that the link it's essentially not removable.
That's what most teams do in Robot Wars.
Of course you do it. You only do it when they make you have a link.
Yeah, but see, there's a meme about how in Robot Wars, links coming out always ruins fights, and it happens all the time. It doesn't happen very often. It never happens to the good robots. And actually, Tim Rackers, the team captain of Ragnarok, it never happened to him because he knew what he was doing with links when he made like Concussion, which was the Robot Wars machine. Very good drum spitter as well.
Well,
but
why did it happen to this?
I don't know. I don't know. Either they got lazy and half-assed it, or maybe there's just stuff happening that they weren't expecting, or maybe Ragnarok is just bad and it should feel bad, which I'm thinking it's option 3.
I don't know the reason it's so bad.
You know, you say it's badly designed. Those forks with the hooks on them worked really well in keeping Warhawk's wedge away.
The
Spinner
axe
away.
didn't work really well.
It didn't work. It got 2 good hits, and that was it.
Well, the first hit was like...
It looked like it just had way too much friction on it. Way too much
It's
friction.
like a dream where you can't hit the person, you know?
Yeah.
And you're just like, and it just hits them like soft.
I've had dreams
They
where
did
I'm holding
hit-
a sword
they did
and
hit-
can't swing it.
Oh,
very
yeah,
fast.
me too.
Like I'm fighting a bear, and I'm just like, this is not swinging. That is the perfect analogy, actually.
Yeah.
I would rather
then they
have
finally
watched...
got it to actually swing with some measure of force, but it did nothing.
This is a fight where I would have been happy to have the ShArK WeeK thing in the corner to distract me from the just obscenity happening.
You
on
had
screen.
it. It was there.
Well, no, actually, I had switched to the
Oh,
pre-recorded
okay.
version that didn't have that.
I had it.
But
It
I
was
wish
there.
I had it. Well, lucky you, because it distracted you. Like, Tim, I want to see you come back with this robot next year and have it working, but, man, you are giving me nothing here.
So I'm confused about why, the way you set up a tournament, it seemed to me that the winner of Minotaur and Lucky should have then fought the winner of Black Dragon and Captain Shredderator. But they switched it up and switched the brackets up. The way a tournament works with brackets, if you're not in their bracket, you can't end up fighting them until the end. But no,
You mean like the lowest seeds should fight the highest seed each time, right?
No, that's switching the brackets around, and that's what they did. They did do that. They took 1 and put them against 4, when really it should have been 1 against 3, and it should have been 2 against 4. In other words, it should have been Minotaur against Black Dragon, and then it should have been Endgame against Warhawk.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
think
not
I
what
agree.
they did.
I think I agree.
I mean, they switched it around, and it's fine. I mean, I guess but I'm not sure. The bottom line is, I guess it was probably a good move for them, because they would have had the best 2 robots take each other out, and maybe that's what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Although, let's see here.
Sacrificing
technically,
integrity for the sake of entertainment.
though, if they would have believed the way they seeded this thing, then no, Minotaur. Technically, Black Dragon should not have been the second best
The
robot.
second seed.
Warhawk was the second seed, and Warhawk made it through its fight.
Did Warhawk was the second seed?
Yes,
It
Warhawk
was.
was the second seed.
Yeah, it was, because Ragnarok was the 7th and they fought. Wow, why
1
was
against
Warhawk,
8, 2
Warhawk?
against 7.
Why
Yeah,
was
see, that makes no
Warhawk-
sense.
Black Dragon performed way better in both its fights.
I
It
agree.
lost on a split decision, and it KO'd Bloodsport in
agree.
like a minute.
And it seems
Warhawk,
like
on
after
other
the
hand-
first 4 fights, they realized, oh crap, Black Dragon is definitely better than Warhawk. We don't want them to fight each other.
This whole tournament is fucked.
Well, it really
it was
was weak,
gosh,
man.
The
It was weak.
seedings make no sense. The way the seedings line up with each other makes no sense.
I know.
What were they thinking with all of this?
I wonder if the producers actually watched the show.
Probably not. If we want that invitation to next season, though, we
They
probably
did a
shouldn't.
great job.
They did a phenomenal job. There were no flaws in this episode. 10 out of 10.
If they invite us next year, we can help consult them and offer some guidance and opinion on seeding.
Yeah.
Maybe have like a committee to seed. Kind of like we do in football.
Yeah. I still would like to be a judge on Battlebots, though. I would seriously...
Well, you're a long way from that.
Yeah. Although I would
Let's just go for tickets, man. Okay, let's just go for tickets.
Yeah.
That's what we need to shoot for.
So this absolutely terrible episode is halfway over now.
So 1st through 4, we got 4 fights down,
4 fights
four
down, 4
fights to go.
3 fights to slog through, 1 fight to praise. But Minotaur versus Endgame. All I have to say about this fight is that's what I'm talking about, Minotaur.
They finally
That
looked
was
good.
excellent. That performance was excellent. This fight was still kind of bad, but just because it was so one-sided. But like
In-game got its ass kicked.
In-game got its ass kicked. And which is weird. Like Minotaur managed to take off all of their forks, their ground riding forks, even though they themselves were not riding their forks, or were not running their forks. Sorry. So they have no way to get under those forks, and yet they still took them off. Mm-hmm. Especially considering like Minotaur pops wheelies all the time, which I think lost in the last fight, but was also a problem with the previous version. So I can't be too mad. But it pops wheelies all the time, so the drum comes off the floor, and they ground down the drum so it wasn't as close to the floor anymore. It still took off those forks. I don't get it. And yeah, it's just a bad robot. Like, let's not beat around the bush anymore. It is kind of a bad robot.
Yeah.
And just,
Minotaur for the first time looked like last year's robot.
It looked better than last year's robot.
I don't know about that.
I think this design is better than last year's, and it performs better.
So
now
you're
that
saying
they
last
finally
year
got their weapon issues corrected.
I don't know about that, man.
I just think it's a little too slow, like its drive. It doesn't seem to ever go above 10 miles an hour. But other than that, man, this thing is
you're
just
saying it's
flawless.
better than last year's robot, and
It's
then
better.
you're saying it's too slow. I don't know.
No. The last year's robot was also really slow as well.
Last year's robot
Last year they were slow
would
too.
have won this tournament.
Well, I think last year's robot would have lost to Black Dragon just like this one did.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, in the middleweights,
But
they did
this
also...
one damn sure lost to Black Dragon. But let's keep going.
Yeah, for sure. Minotaur kicked their ass.
So we got the first seed against the fourth seed.
Endgame once again failing to self-right. And also not using their sunglasses again, which is just making me dislike them at this point. Like, you brought sunglasses as your street mech. Use the sunglasses. Why are you going in with this one-arm flagpole thing? What is this shit? I don't like it. And it doesn't even work, so what even's the point? I mean, might as well not even go in with a self-rider if they can't self-right.
Yeah.
Like before, the first big hit just makes Endgame completely shut off and stop working, pretty much. They can't get on their feet again. They almost got stuck on the screws, and the screws had to run backward for like 5.5 minutes to get them off. And then they got put on their back, where of course they couldn't recover. So, oh boy. Oh, this episode. 5 trash fights in a row, dude.
Yeah. Right.
Moving on to Warhawk versus Black Dragon. I want you to read the only note that I have for this fight. Read it out loud if you would.
Skip.
I'm glad you agree. Axe Backwards versus Deep Six. The first fight in the episode that wasn't complete trash. And this was a great debut for Deep Six as well. Finally we get to see them.
Yeah.
This was
an unstable robot, but boy, they spin that weapon, man.
This was the best debut they could have hoped for because they got the KO in spectacular fashion.
Oh, man.
They didn't take any damage themselves, but then they caught fire because they're just that powerful. And then, after all that, they revealed that they were only running it at 50% throttle.
I know. That thing's powerful, man.
Best debut they could have possibly hoped for in every way. Axe Backwards, on the other hand,
I thought Axe Backwards just walked right into that hit. Like, okay, well, we're just going to drive right into it so we can see what happens. Oh, shit, that didn't work.
This is now the third fight in a row where their weapon has not spun. I think it was spinning a little bit, but in the previous 2 fights it never turned on.
Does Dragon really have a weapon?
It's a full-body drum.
Whatever.
It's a full-body drum. Heaviest vertical spinner, I think, in the competition.
Yeah, that's...
And it's much like last year. It lives in a world that's not ready for it yet. No. It sucks. I had a lot of high hopes for it this year, but it just doesn't really work.
No,
and I'm still so confused as to why they don't have a big, long, jut-out tooth thing across the whole drum. Instead, they have these little tiny beak things that come out. Like,
are they supposed to hit you with a drum? Is that what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, that's a drum spinner. That whole body is a drum spinner. It weighs like 150, 60 pounds. It's twice as heavy as Minotaur's.
Does it spin?
It hasn't spun yet.
I mean...
And then, like, the small teeth also mean it's not going to get a big engagement. Like, it worked fine last year.
It looks like a cylinder with 2 wheels that just drives around and gets hit.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked a single time yet. And last year it had a much worse design, but the weapon did work. But the only fight where they actually got any hits, they were tiny hits that didn't really do much of anything. Because those teeth are too small to get a good bite on anything.
We're being very critical this episode.
Yes, we are, but... I would say that this episode deserves it.
Yeah.
It deserves it because it's a trash episode. It's not as bad as episode 2, purely by virtue of this having one great fight.
What do you think of Deep Six? Like,
this fight was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. It was the best debut they could have hoped for, but it was not a good fight overall.
I mean,
it was a great fight.
Overall for their robot, their stability, I'm a little worried about that.
I mean, they didn't fall over.
It looks like it might take off and fly.
I mean, I'm sure if you tried to lift it off the workbench, you might think differently. But they seemed to turn reasonably well. I mean, I know they were only running at 50% speed, but they didn't fall over backward, probably because of those stupid-looking long skis coming out the back.
Yeah.
Making sure they don't have a repeat nightmare of their test box issue where they fell over backward and broke everything. But yeah, I mean, I thought this was a very funny fight.
I did too.
Yeah, seeing Axe Backwards get split apart like that was quite sad, but also like, eh. And I love how the Axe Backwards team had a great attitude about it, because they've now been split in half twice, and both times they were split in half, they yelled to the other team, "Hit us again!" because they think it's funny. Now, well, we lost anyway, might as well.
See, that's the right attitude.
Yeah.
That's what Valkyrie should have done against Ragnarok when they fought him. Was gone in there, beat the shit out of him, tear him up, put that thing out of its misery, man. Let them rebuild it. Maybe they'll get it right the second time, third time.
Maybe
people watch this to see machines get
yeah.
torn up.
Yeah, I can't even disagree. We're only 31 minutes in.
So 31 minutes in,
we're on the 8th fight.
6 fights down plus a
bonus fight.
Yeah.
You know for a fact that the only reason they included or were able to include this fight is because the other fights were so short.
Oh, of course.
So obvious that is the case.
And we finally have
one
the
of
number
the
1 seed
best fights of the entire series.
The number 3 seed.
The two only good robots in this entire episode.
The two only good robots.
And it was one of the best fights in the entire show ever.
So it wasn't before the fight began, did you think Black Dragon would win?
I didn't think they'd win, but I thought they'd take it to the judges. I was like, well, okay, so first of all, in the middleweight class at RoboGames again, Black Dragon's middleweight version has fought Minotaur's middleweight version, and Minotaur got its ass kicked, basically. So this is actually their second time fighting, and Minotaur did way better in this fight than they did in the middleweight fight. They were barely outmatched, just barely outmatched by Black Dragon.
I agree.
This was such an amazing fight, because
this was a very good fight.
Is it as good as Sawblaze Blacksmith? Probably not, but it's almost there.
And even Black Dragon lost its weapon. They still took it to him, man.
Yeah,
and I think they outdrove him.
Not by much, but they did outdrive him.
I think they outdrove him.
There were moments where Minotaur was on top.
I didn't say by much. I said they outdrove him.
Yeah,
He's been getting outdriven this year.
Well, I mean, this is the first time where the Minotaur has been working, and then he's also been outdriven, and he lost a fight. But yeah,
he's been outdriven this year.
This fight was everything Battlebots should be. It was a duel.
Yeah.
Both robots were working perfectly. Black Dragon's weapon stopped, but that was because of damage incurred during the fight. Mm-hmm. Minotaur had no issues going in. Their drum was humming at full blast the entire time. I would say they were
finally at 100%.
Yes, and then Black Dragon had no issues going in, no electrical problems. They got damaged, sure, but that's to be expected. This was a duel. And I thought, like, Minotaur still did so well. They were not getting their ass kicked. This fight was unbelievably close.
No, it was a close fight.
Yeah.
I scored it Black Dragon 4, Minotaur 3.
Minotaur, I think, got all the... I
would have been disappointed. I didn't think it should have been a split decision, and I was happy that it was not.
Oh, I thought for sure it was going to be a split decision.
I didn't.
I was shocked when it wasn't.
No, I thought Black Dragon won.
Well, I mean, I knew Black Dragon won, but I was like, surely one of the judges is going to vote for Minotaur. There's no way. But
Black Dragon took it to him, man. I mean, they didn't kick their ass, but they beat him.
Yeah.
They did a great job.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job. And I mean, there were still big chunks of that fight where Minotaur was winning. Because one of my favorite moments of that fight, aside from the big moment where Minotaur got held against the wall and its drum just ground against the wall, like, Argh! That was the moment where I realized, okay, Black Dragon's got this.
Yeah.
But my other favorite moment is when is a moment where Minotaur retook the lead, where Black Dragon was pushing him around for a bit. They managed to get away. Their drum is going, and then they just do this 180 spin to face Black Dragon who's coming behind them. They just kick them away like 20 feet. Like, boom, get out of my face, boy. I'm on top now. And then Minotaur was on top for a bit until Black Dragon managed to bring it back and then kept that lead up for the rest of the fight. That was such a good-ass fight. This fight redeemed this episode.
Well,
it was totally worth the wait.
Well, you're right about that.
Slogging through these trash fights to get to this one incredible one was so worth.
Well, it would have been much better had the other 7 fights.
Well, yeah, but this made it all worth it.
Yeah, it was a good fight. It was a good fight. It was a great. I have written a great fight, and that's exactly what I think it was.
One of the best fights of the season.
And I was
one of the best fights
really
of the series.
pleased with the way I mean, just it was awesome seeing the emotion the Black Dragon guys had.
Yeah.
I mean, they won it, man. They were excited. It was a big deal to them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, this kind of leads me back as well, though, to something I was saying earlier, which is the only 2 problems Minotaur has, this new design, which are both problems that the old design had, which is that it wheelies constantly, so it can't keep those little forks on the ground. And I think that is the main factor that lost in this fight. And also, they're too slow. Their drive is too slow. They couldn't get away from Black Dragon. Yeah. If they had been a lot faster, they would have won this fight, I think. But they weren't.
People caught Minotaur.
Yeah.
Or Minotaur slipped.
I
still think Minotaur slipped from last year.
I mean, I think they've corrected a lot of... they corrected the big problem with last year's version, which is that their weapon can't get big hits all the time. It just shreds gently, which... they had an AMA last year, and I asked them, is that a good thing? Do you like that? And they were like, no, we like the big uppercuts, and we don't like when it just grinds on the other guys. So this version seems to consistently get large uppercuts.
When?
What do you mean when?
The robot didn't work the first 2 fights for the shit.
What? It's because they got some stuff wrong.
Okay, but it didn't work.
Yeah, but I'm talking about this fight. The only times they ground were when they're in forks
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th fight, they finally worked.
Well, I mean, in 3 fights they had in this episode, they got huge hits
on the last 2
most of the time in all 3 fights.
So.
No, I'm going to say all 3 fights. They got big hits on Lucky. They didn't really.
Okay, they did. I mean, that was an okay fight.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bad fight, but they still got big hits.
So out of 5 fights, the first 2 were pathetic.
Yeah, because they didn't get spun up at all.
There you go.
Yeah, but that's not a problem this design had. It was a problem this design had, but they fixed it.
My point is, again, I think they slipped from last year. If you're going to say that they recovered a little bit, I'll agree with that. I've said that. But I think they slipped from last year, man. Certainly they slipped from their dominance position. Now, did they slip, or did everybody catch them or pass them? I don't know that.
They slipped because...
I think they did.
Look, no matter how good everybody else gets, if your weapon doesn't work, you slipped. It's not the other guy's fault.
There you go.
But they recovered in these last 3 fights, though.
Well,
and they performed this...
I would say they recovered in the last 2. I don't think Minotaur and Lucky was a... It certainly was not a great fight.
It was a showcase of Minotaur's power, if anything.
It wasn't a great fight, but it wasn't a bad fight.
Yeah, I see that.
I mean, because a great fight is the ones we wrote great fight on.
Yeah.
Which would it be? The finals was a great fight. Deep 6 against Axe Backwards was a good fight.
Yeah.
I certainly don't think Minotaur versus Lucky was a great fight. I think it was barely a good fight, an okay fight.
Yeah, it was very mediocre. And then everything else was garbage.
Minotaur against Endgame, they finally, that's what I wrote, finally Minotaur did what we expect them to do.
Yeah. And they got those big hits I was talking about. And really, in this fight against Black Dragon, the only times they really ground on them instead of getting a big uppercut were when they couldn't fully get under them or when they just rode over top of them. Because they did do that a lot.
Yeah, they did.
In that same AMA I was just talking about, I also asked them about the fact that Minotaur pops wheelies constantly. And I said, now why does that happen? Surely all the weight is at the front because of the big drum on the front. And they said, it is at the front, but not by a lot. And
it's well balanced, or
it has a small percentage of the weight more at the front,
sure.
Basically, which is very strange to me. I don't understand why their wheels aren't further backward, like Copperhead, because Copperhead has a lot of force, I'm sure, on its forks. It's never gonna wheelie, but Minotaur does.
The wheelies hurt them.
Yeah, and Minotaur does wheelie almost every time they drive forward, and they're constantly just bouncing around and having their forks come off the floor and going up on top of Black Dragon's wedge, which got us a lot of cool weapon-to-weapon hits, but it was not good for Minotaur because they would prefer to not go weapon-to-weapon.
Exactly.
Yeah, they would prefer to get those big uppercuts, tear Black Dragon's wedge off, and then just shred him to pieces. and that's not what they were able to do. But regardless, I can't like I said, because this was a problem that the last versions had, I cannot blame that on this version. I do think that aside from those two flaws that have carried over, it being slow and wheeling constantly, this version improves on everything. It looks much better for one thing. It also, the drum gets harder hits because it's larger diameter, more inertia, and a slightly lower RPM. All that contributes to a bigger engagement with more power. Actually, now that I think about it, it did struggle a tiny bit to self-right sometimes because the extra big corners on the front kind of lifted the wheel off the ground when it was trying to do that, but it still can self-right. So, that's my hot take on Minotaur. So, what do we think of Black Dragon then? Because we haven't really talked about them.
I thought they looked good, man. I don't know how they'll do in the final 16.
I came in thinking they look like a good robot that's not great, and I'm kind of riding on that a little bit still. I mean, yeah, they're much better in my eyes now than I thought they were before because they beat Minotaur. A fully working Minotaur.
I don't think saying that means what it meant last year.
But Minotaur was working perfectly this time. And Black Dragon also got their weapon taken. I'm
going to stick by my statement that I don't think beating Minotaur this year means what it would have meant last year.
That's fair. Black Dragon is a cool robot. I mean, the idea that of a vertical spinner having a flamethrower still makes me sick to my stomach, but they didn't use it, so...
Well, what I'll say about Black Dragon is the damn robot worked.
Yeah, they sure did.
It's huge, particularly at this stage in the competition, man. Mm-hmm. Because I feel that a lot of the robots coming into this tournament were already beat up.
Yeah.
And so they're looking good, and that's awesome. That's huge. It's a big part of, any sport or competition or whatever to finish stronger, or to not be so degraded by the time the finals roll around that you just can't hardly do anything.
I mean, yeah, that is really the biggest problem with this season is that we're now halfway through and there are still machines that have new build problems, even though most of them have had 2 or 3 fights by now. Yeah. Which is, this is a bigger issue than we've ever had before with this sort of thing. Usually by a machine's second fight, it would be okay, all that stuff's fixed. But with Minotaur, it took till their 3rd fight, even though they have an obscenely experienced team. Lucky still doesn't work. In game, had their 4th fight in this episode, still had the same reliability issues as their 1st fight.
I wonder if people have tried upgrading things. For instance, going from brush to brushless motors, or going from brushless censored to uncensored, and different issues like that. If that's if they're just basically haven't learned enough yet. I don't know.
Brushless is definitely harder to get right, but. Minotaur's always been brushless, for example.
Well, here's the thing. Why did the robot struggle so much early on?
Because the first time it was because their gear ratios had too little torque to spin this weapon that had 35% more inertia. It's because they were not expecting it to be that drastically different, right? And also those motors are uncensored, so they don't have much startup torque, but it was because the gear ratios were just providing too little torque to spin up that weapon that had way more inertia than the last one did. And then in the second fight, it spun up fine right at the beginning, but then the slightest bit of damage to the underside of the machine caused the drum to start hitting the floor as it was spinning. So they realized, okay, now the problem is that the drum is too low, so we need to grind with a grinding disc on the teeth to make it a little bit shorter. So that's what they did, and it worked fine.
I guess my point is everybody, or a lot of people, came in with what they felt were upgrades, and those upgrades didn't result in a better robot. In some cases, they resulted in a worse robot.
Spinnerproof did actually talk about this a little bit in regards to in-game, which is appropriate for me to bring up now because in-game is actually in this episode. A lot of machines this year have upgrades that look good, and they're not working.
Exactly. That's my point. That is exactly my point.
The machine worse.
That's exactly my point.
Even though, they are objectively good things, and I mean, Minotaur...
I mean, because you're actually essentially saying, this is all better for Minotaur, and yet the results were not better.
They weren't better at first, though.
Well, look, man, they lost the Desperado tournament.
but it was to a great robot that had a front end that was designed to beat them.
You keep. I don't think you're facing the facts that Minotaur isn't as good as they were last year.
I'm arguing that Black Dragon's better than they were in this fight. I'm still not arguing that I'm not quite convinced that Black Dragon is better than them outright, but they did beat them fair and square.
The podcast you just mentioned,
It's been approved.
what they said is exactly what I agree with.
I agree.
We got
with it too,
upgrades, and the results didn't come
Yeah,
through.
they look good, but they're not working.
That's correct.
Like with Bombshell, for example, like they went
That's
back to
correct.
their successful design, their modular design, and it's just completely sucking a dick. And it's not working. It's not working for them. And
So, did the teams just try to rush something in before this competition? Were they, busy with other things and they didn't get to fully test this stuff? I don't know what the answer is.
it could be any of those things.
Was last year's episode coming at the tail end of a bunch of competitions where they knew their robot real well and had it dialed in? I don't know, man.
I mean, the last version of Endgame also was super unreliable. And their 2 wins were against robots that... Actually, now that I think about it, none of Endgame's wins have ever been really legit. Because their first ever fight on Battlebots was against Captain Shredderator. I'm gonna let you fill in the gaps on that one. I'm gonna give you one guess as to what happened in that fight. One guess, and if you don't get it, this podcast is over. What do you think happened?
Captain Shredderator died.
They weren't working from the start. One side of their drive was not working from the Twitch test, and as he was kind of fidgeting around with it, he couldn't even get it fully back in the box to start the fight. And then Endgame's second win was again, they fought Lockjaw next, right? And pretty much right at the beginning, Lockjaw got behind them and got under them and was pushing them toward the wall. But then, and you're going to laugh your ass off when I say this, Lockjaw's fork got stuck in the kill saw slot, just like Gruff's did, which gave Endgame like several free hits on the wheels with their big ass vertical spinner and just destroyed Lockjaw basically. And then from then on out, they've lost every fight, except for the Gruff fight where again their opponent's fork got stuck in the kill saw slot, which is hilarious. So
Yeah, I don't know.
oh boy,
That floor's got to be fixed eventually.
yeah. I mean, can you really do much about the kill saws though?
Honestly, I don't like the kill saws.
They never really do much of anything,
No.
except unless it's stuff like this.
Well, except for screw shit up.
Except for screw shit out of it. Except for help Endgame, occasionally.
I mean, I like, honestly, I really don't like any of the.
Any of the hazards?
Yeah, I don't.
Let me get myself another beer real quick. You keep talking.
It seems to me like they're a little too gimmicky and kind of pointless. They don't do much.
The hazards are for scoring points, really, more than anything else.
I mean, yeah, I'm just not a fan of them, man. I say build an arena. Build it so that you can knock people out of the arena. I like that. Put them over their wall, the curb, whatever you want to call it. But
The arena.
yeah, the saws, I don't like the saws, man.
Well, I'm going to make a point you've made to me many times when I've argued for integrity over entertainment. You're trying to build a show.
Well, you are. Yeah.
And you gotta have entertainment
I know.
above all else. Yeah.
And that's really what it is.
I mean, I actually agree with you though. I'm just bringing back up something you've said. Like I completely.
Well, they
agree.
are, and it's
I
on
think there
them
should
to
be-
build a good show.
There should be some hazards, I think, but not ones that can effectively decide a fight like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm cool with hazards, man. I just wish there were better hazards, man. Like that actually really did some serious damage, man.
No, I don't think that. Should
Well,
be
then,
the case.
otherwise, it's just kind of a little bit of an annoyance, janky little thing, man. When we started this, I don't know if it was episode 1, 2, or 3, but somewhere early on, because this is episode 9 for us.
Yeah.
I made the point that when you have 67 robots in a competition, it's really going to be your top 10% that are good. In anything, that's how it works. In the NFL, there's 32 teams. There's 4 to 6 really good ones. So 15, your top 10 to 15, maybe 20%. And that's, I think, right where we're at. I think we've got, 6 to 10 super solid robots, and everybody else is way behind.
Yeah.
There's not 8 Tom Brady's in this tournament.
Yeah. There's not.
And it's just kind of how life always is, man. I mean, you go to a corporation that's full of badasses. Well, you got 100 badasses at this corporation. The top 10% are still far better than the other 90.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what we're going to see when we get into the top 16. I'm curious, how are we going to get 8 more episodes out of this show?
Well, what do you mean? I mean, there's going to be I think 6 more regular season episodes, and then 2 episodes that are in the final 16.
So is the 6 more regular season episodes just going to be free for all? Let's kick some ass.
It's going to be more of what we've been getting, which is hopefully great episodes. But it's the
hoping
fight night
for
format.
good
It's
fight.
the fight night format.
Yeah.
I think
let's just put them together and go.
I think Bite Force and Hyper ShArK are going to fight next week. Next week, August 9th. Yeah.
Well, we're taking a week off. I
makes
mean,
me
we're
feel
not.
sad.
The show is, which means we are.
Well, yeah, I said next week because it is next week.
Okay.
But poor Hyper ShArK again, because they fought. This is now going to be their 3rd time fighting Bite Force. What did they do to earn this fight against them? What did Will Bales sleep with the producer's wife or something? They must hate Will Bales to do this to him again.
Man, they want good fights. So, that's what they need. They didn't have them out of this show.
Hyper ShArK is way better this season, to be fair, but it's not as good as Bite Force, for sure.
I'm agreeing with you. I mean, they want good fights. That means you put 2 good robots against each other and get it on, man.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
they need good fights. That's what they need. They need good fights.
They did do that with Monsoon in Hyper ShArK, but they didn't realize that Monsoon was apparently using these metal rings to attach its weapon to its body instead of big bolts like it was last year for some reason. Tom, what were you thinking with that one? But yeah, they I'm sure switched back to bolts. But that was not really effectively. They've had 1 fight against Valkyrie, which they still. I mean, they didn't dominate that fight. So why are they fighting Bite Force now? I don't get it.
Hopefully it's a good fight.
I don't know, man. I mean, this really was the 2nd worst episode of the whole season so far. Where the Desperado tournament last year was fun. The machines overall were still just as crappy of a tier overall as this time, but not really.
I guess I was thinking of expecting more from the Desperado tournament. But maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe it was exactly what it's supposed to be.
I'll tell you what, Warhawk at least was
the
way
second
better.
tier teams struggling to get someone through. And that's what makes me wonder about Black Dragon, Is it just a second tier team that beat a bunch of worse second tier teams? I don't think that is again my point about Minotaur. There was nobody last year, in my opinion, who was considering Minotaur a second tier team. Yeah. And we certainly are this year.
You know what I just realized? Is that a big part of this tournament is meant to be the whole idea of you only have 2 hours, probably max, to repair your machine.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That didn't come into play once. We
No,
never heard
it
anything
didn't.
about it.
No,
all
because-
the machines that won were never badly damaged at all.
I'll agree with that.
Minotaur did not take any damage until the final. Black Dragon only got 1 hole put in its wedge.
That's because the fights leading up to it were so weak.
Bad. Warhawk took no damage from Ragnarok. Endgame took at least external damage from Gruff.
Well, there was a big hit between them two, and then they both were just dead.
Well, no, I know, but that probably just necessitates swapping out the motors. Endgame had no visible damage on it that would require actual hammering or welding or anything.
Well, okay, no visible damage. It was invisible damage.
Oh, yeah, but all that is just you swap out some things and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I know, but it still was a crappy fight because they're just sitting there wiggling around.
Point is, the short repair time didn't hurt any of the winners at any point.
I would agree with that.
Every time a person won,
I would agree with that. I would
no
agree with that
damage.
again because the fights were so weak.
They were terrible, yeah.
I mean, nobody got their ass tore up because their opponent wasn't kicking any ass.
Oh, Endgame kind of got its ass tore up. Kind of. It really didn't. It didn't have much damage on it, really.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that.
I mean, I think it is a tough body, then. Its exterior is strong.
Again, my point is nobody got tore up because nobody was tearing anybody up.
Yeah.
I mean...
Oh, boy.
Of the first 4 fights...
Oh, actually, Axe Backwards got its ass kicked and got tore up.
Who would you say got their ass kicked good more than anybody? I would have to say Probably Minotaur against Lucky. And again, I wasn't super impressed with Minotaur. I didn't think it was I think it was just a good fight, but it was still the best.
Can you argue that Captain Shredderator got its ass kicked when sure it died after one hit, but Black Dragon, I guess, got affected by that hit? That not like they didn't have anything stop working, but they did land on their back and have to self-right. So
They did.
yeah, so they were put in a negative spot at this
That was a
point.
big hit.
Yeah, that was a big hit. That was a crazy hit, and then the fight was over. And
Yes, it was.
Oh gosh, our audience can't see it, but I'm rolling my eyes right now. Super bad episode. I'm sorry, but it was a super bad episode, and I think people on Reddit are kind of agreeing. They're like, yeah, the only good fights were the last two.
Yeah.
And really, I mean, yeah, the episode is almost redeemed by that last fight because it was just such an amazing fight.
It was a good fight.
Oh yeah. I was really worried you weren't going to like that fight, though. Like, I was
really?
concerned that because it didn't have a straight-up knockout, that
No,
you were going to be like,
no.
this is boring.
No, it had some drama. It was good. It was a good fight. I liked it. That was a great fight.
Mm-hmm. Like, even the people who don't like Minotaur or Black Dragon and think drums are boring are probably be like, oh, this ain't bad. This is pretty good. You know, like, just two Battlebots doing what they... You know what I just realized, actually? Is that in the past, like in past seasons, vertical spinner versus vertical spinner fights have usually been kind of blandish, one-sided fights that end in a few hits or are decided by driving. And then in this season, most of the best fights have been vert versus vert. It's really like what changed? They're the best ones this season. I don't know what happened, but I'm happy it happened because being that so much of the field is vertical spinners now. If vert versus vert fights were still bad, that would make for a bad season because there's going to be a lot of those.
Yeah.
But they've been the best ones so far.
Well,
Good.
I've liked some of the lifter fights. I like Hydra.
Yeah, Hydra's pretty dank.
So.
Well, have there been any lifter versus lifter fights?
No, Bronco hadn't gone against Hydra. I mean, you could
Well,
Hydra went against free shipping,
which is a lifter, but that's not lifter versus lifter. That's lifter versus flipper.
Yeah, that's my point. I guess when I say lifter, I mean flipper. I should have clarified. It's almost the same thing, except a flipper is a lifter on steroids.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And usually powered by either pneumatics or in hydraulics, or in Hydra's case, hydraulics. But it's still pneumatics, really. It's just you're just compressing a pressurized air cylinder with hydraulics, and then releasing it, and it goes bushkas and flips people into the clouds. I have nothing more to say about this episode.
No,
I'm surprised we managed to talk for an hour, all things considered. Considering that we were on, like, what was it, the fourth fight by 12 minutes in or something? I'm shocked that we've carried on this long. This is still our shortest episode by far, though.
I'm looking forward to a break.
Yeah, as short as
not a break from the podcast as much as a break from the show.
Yeah.
I don't always enjoy having my Friday night already lined out for me.
Yeah. I mean,
I guess
really
I could watch it on a computer, but I wanted to just watch it kind of live as it unfolded and let it go from there.
Well, I can't disagree. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I've been Mokemeister from Reddit, and this has been my co-host, Scott.
Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate all the people tuning in, listening to the podcast. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Ben, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here, Scott. Good night, everybody.
Good night.